I could both laugh and cry.
Buckle up for safety as I give you a day in the life of facilities maintenance.
If you're a regular follower of the channel, you'll know that we had a massive flood in our gym. We got away pretty lucky, but there was a lake under the floor. We've been drying out the floor for the last few weeks, and it's time to do a bit of a plumbing upgrade. These Poly-B transition fittings that transition from the underfloor Poly-B piping to either copper or CPVC, they are ticking time bombs. And before we have another failure, I need to replace them. So I'm going to do a little bit of prep work, make some areas accessible so that I can actually do the job.
Now another area that I have to do some prep work in is this weight room where I have all the shutoffs down there. Because if you'll notice, that is a very small hatch. So I have to open up this wall as well.
One of the sad truths about any job like this is that if I were a plumbing contractor coming in to do this job, I would do the job and leave. But being the facilities guy, I know that for everything I take apart like this, I'm going to have to put it back together.
Okay, that gives me the kind of access I need here. I pulled out a set of plans from September 1994. I can show you what I'm going to be working on here. These two areas here, this one that says Schedule A and this one that says Schedule B. If you've been following this channel for any length of time, you've probably seen these. Schedule A is where all the shutoffs exist in the wall in the athletic office. The other one that you're familiar with is in the weight room. Now, what I was hoping for is that the plans would also show any connections that are hidden in the walls.
Unfortunately, supply runs, no matter how they transition from one type of pipe to another, do not show up on the building plan. If it's not a shutoff, it's not on the plan.
Where we had the flood in the gym, that was in the wall of the elevator machine room right here. There's nothing indicated here.
It's the day before the big game.
When I say big game, what I mean by that is tomorrow morning is when I come in here and I start in on our major upgrade with all the Poly-B plumbing fittings in the school. There's a few things I need to take care of first. One of them is drain the water from the system. But before I do that, there are a couple other things I need to do. Now, because I won't be able to do this tomorrow with no water, I need to make myself a pot of coffee so that I can at least have cold coffee that I can reheat in the microwave. I can now move on to the next thing, which is to shut off the circ pump, because we all know what happens when we don't do that. The next thing is I'm going to want some fresh water to drink while I'm here tomorrow and the next day. I think that's everything I need to do in the school, So now the final thing I need to do is shut off the water and drain the system. And here is where I should be able to drain the system. I do not want to have to babysit this while it is draining. Rather than send all the water out in the parking lot and down the storm drain, and I'll just let it go down the drain here overnight, and that will get my system drained. As an added bonus, even with the water shut off, there are a couple dozen toilets in the building that'll all flush once. All right. That should take care of everything tonight. I'll see you in the morning. We're ready to get started. Other than gathering up maybe a couple of towels and my shop vac, we're ready to go. So I turn on the bathroom taps on the first floor, and I do get a bit of a trickle coming out of them. So hopefully that doesn't mean that there's still a bunch of water left in the lower portions of the lines, and I'm going to be fighting water when I'm doing this job. Although this is probably exactly what that means. I really hope that's not the case, because if it is, that'll be very disappointing, because it'll take what could have been a one and a half day job. I hope I get finished in 2 days. I was going along shutting off all these valves. I run into this one where this piece of rebar is randomly sticking up here. It was probably supposed to be cut off at some point in time during the initial construction. It wasn't, but it's preventing this valve from being actuated. I think I'm just going to cut it off. I need to figure out a couple of things here. I'm going to be transitioning from Poly-B to PEX. So I need to insert one of these transition couplers that are designed to do exactly this. However, they don't tell you which ring is for Poly-B and which is for the PEX. The actual fitting itself, the PEX side is the one with the wider spacings, and the Poly-B side has the much narrower spacing. The irony is that I've got a bag of copper PEX crimp rings here, and they all say PEX right on them. Maybe it doesn't matter. But if it didn't matter, why would they make them different? They're exactly the same in size and thickness. Very interesting. Well, it takes a fair bit of force. And never having used these crimp pliers, it's probably a good idea to use my go, no go. It's good. So these are properly calibrated. The point of no return will happen when I remove this compression fitting. Once I do that, then I need to crimp that piece in that I just made, and then measure a 2-inch gap between the end of that pipe and my copper pipe, and then cut my copper pipe off at that length, and then I can use my slip coupling to join them. So these are the parts here that are failing.
And because the end of the Poly-B piping has been deformed from the actual compression fitting itself, I have to cut it off to give me a fresh end.
Basically what I'm doing here is I just want to get to a piece of fresh pipe. I just realized something. These slip couplings for 1-inch tubing I noticed on the outside of the bag that it said 1-inch PVC, and I thought, well, that's odd. Maybe they mean CPVC. But look at this. I'd have to say it's more like 1.125", even though it says 1 inch right on it, because this goes right through. There's no way that I'm joining this 1-inch pipe to here. Okay, plan B, or is this C? I need to go get a different type of coupling. The problem is everything is ProPress around here nowadays.
And while it's a great system because they also make a slip coupling very similar to a shark bite slip coupling, it's a very expensive system to commit to, and if you're not in the plumbing trade, not something that you're typically going to purchase. So since I don't have access to a ProPress tool, and since the 1-inch slip couplings are not readily available, I'm going to have to try and make this work with a regular 1-inch shark bite coupling, which is approved to transition from PEX to copper.
I need to make a run to the store. Well, I've picked up a bag of standard 1-inch shark bite couplings, which will allow me to couple to this copper. 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
It's actually going to be 3 steps back, only I don't know it yet. So whatever you do, don't tell me. Here it comes.
The difficulty that I'm running into here, with a piece of PEX piping this short, there's no flex to it. And this does not move.
For those of you who are counting, I think I'm on plan C now. What I realized I had to do was undo every one of these couplings. In order to release all of these pipes that are attached to a manifold, they all attach to the same manifold. By releasing all the couplings, I'm hoping to be able to lift the manifold enough to create enough space to insert the piece of pipe that I'm trying to get in. Okay, a couple things. That manifold that all these pipes connect to is really, really strong. The other thing is that I've edited out about 10 minutes of me taking rest breaks between attempts because this takes so much effort. I've got to get it back together. If I don't get this one fitting together, I can't turn the system back on.
Maybe that way.
Well, I hope you're sweating as much as I am, and if you haven't guessed, I am never doing that again.
Okay, that was really hard. So as it stands right now, I could reconnect these compression fittings and restore the plumbing. Now I'd like to see this go in further, and that will happen once everything is seated back down to its original position. Right now it's sitting a little bit high. That's because these have all been dislodged and they're just kind of sitting on top of there now. They're not bedded into each other. Well, I've had a bit of a setback. I was able to get that one line put together by undoing all the compression fittings and creating just enough space to be able to get that in. But there's no way that I can fight with every single one like that. So I'm gonna have to put it all back together and order some actual 1-inch slip couplings. They're available, they're just not readily available. They're special order. I am going to have to do what I can with this project and then put the rest of it on hold until a later date and do it all over again. By that time though, I'll be really good at it. I can do the 3/4 inch. I have some 3/4 inch transitions here which will allow me to crimp from Poly-B to PEX, and my slip coupling will allow me to connect to the 3/4 inch copper line. Oh, my hip! Ow! Cramp! Oh man.
Before I do anything else, I need to put these couplings back together.
You definitely need to start these by hand and make sure you're not cross-threaded. And if you look at this guy here, we're back down to the line. So I'm seated a full 1 1/8 inch into here, which is what they require. So I will carry on now with the ones that I can address and I'll have to special order these parts, which I thought I'd already done. That's on me. I ordered the wrong part, and then I can pick up the rest of these at a later date. Okay, that can now be considered a proper repair. One down, 1, 2, 3 more to go. So when I'm measuring the space between my new crimped transition piece here and this slip joint, I measure 6 5/8. That's what I've got for a distance in there. That will allow me to slip my piece of 3/4 inch PEX in here. On the piece itself, this first marking is 1 1/8. That's how far it needs to insert into the slip joint so that I know I have a good seal. And this marking right here is my cutoff point.
And for these last two, I ran into yet another snag. Because they are located right behind a stud that I can't cut out of the way, I needed to go pick up an offset crimper.
Okay, everything that I can do in this area, they're done. So now I need to move to a different area of the school and take care of a few spots there. Okay, so I'm over where our most recent flood started, and I'm dealing with a bit of a different animal here. Where before I was dealing with copper, here I'm dealing with CPVC and Poly-B. So it's a little bit different. I can't cut this stuff with a tubing cutter. It will literally shatter. It just gets really, really brittle. I've got all the piping I need, and I've got your basic 90s in 3/4 inch and 1 inch. These will just be crimped. Most of that stuff will just involve sitting down and building it. It won't be anything that I'm fighting with a slip joint or anything. These two here may need a slip joint. So time will tell. I'm going to do them one circuit at a time so I don't mix up which connections double back and go to where. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think you do. bucket time and a towel. Not really understanding why this is so full of water, but it is. So let's just see how much. The last thing I want to do is send more water back underneath the floor that we just dried out. The only thing that I can think of is that there is water sitting in a stack somewhere that, for whatever reason, did not drain out of the system, but the water main shut off and the low point drain opened up. That's really weird. I got it coming out of both ends.
Which, if we're honest, usually only happens when you're on vacation and you eat at the all-you-can-eat buffet.
Well, I'm sure there's half a gallon on the floor, so here's 4 gallons. I can't just let this thing puke water out all day long and sit here and watch it. What I think I need to do is build my piece, put my fittings on the ends, and then take this out and put the other one in as quickly as possible. I don't see any other way around this, because this could continue to drain empty for an hour. I have another gallon and a half here. One of the nice things about these transition couplings is it's very easy to tell which end goes into the PEX and which end goes into the Poly-B, because they're actually different sizes. From a distance, you can tell because it has tighter rings on the Poly-B side, but the Poly-B side actually will not fit into the PEX piping. That's because the Poly-B has a thinner wall, so this side of the fitting needs to be a little bit larger.
With the tools I have on hand, I'm finding it really challenging to cut this Poly-B piping. It's hard to access, it's very thin walled, and so it's squishy. I finally get through it.
Come on. Hi there, future Arne here. So I was in the plumbing store picking up a faucet and I saw this hanging on the wall. An actual pipe cutter made for 1-inch Poly-B piping. This will make my life a little bit easier. Now let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. Alright, I've got a floor to dry. Floors are now dry, my towels are now dry. Let's get going. I've got enough piping exposed here that I'm just going to cut these off underneath the fittings and not worry about fiddling with those fittings, so I can cut them off and get the new piece in there pretty quick. Well, I think I've got everything I need. My new piece, I've got the crimp rings, I've got a hacksaw blade, which I'm going to use to score the 3/4 inch piping, which I find if I do that first, then I can cut it with the actual tubing cutter if I can get access, and I think I should be able to on this one. I've got a towel sitting here in case I need to clean up any water. I've got my vacuum here in case I need to turn that on and suck up any major water. I've got my crimper. I think I'm good to go. This is the next one I'm going to do, and if you're wondering why it's staggered a little bit, it's because these two fittings here are staggered a little bit, and we learned from our mistakes. I've thrown a couple of zip ties around here now, so when I slip my compression ring over here, I'm not going to lose it down in the abyss. Until I get my slip couplings, which could take a week or two, this one is done. So a couple of lines that come up through the floor in Poly-B and then transition to CPVC are in here. and they run upstairs to one of the science labs. And of course, I hid the screws when I made this access panel. I'm gonna have to hunt for those. And I will do that with a magnet. Okay, I've got two 1-inch and one 3/4. Unfortunately, I can't do the 1-inch on the left, those two on the left, because I don't have my slip couplings yet. I can do the 3/4 inch on the right. Because I'm dealing with CPVC and not copper this time, this is going to look a little bit different. And I don't know if this is in any rule book or not, but because this CPVC is so brittle, I don't want to push this slip coupling onto it and then pull it back down again. I just want to push it on and be done with it. With the copper, I pushed it on like this and then pushed it back down on top of it. I don't want to do that here. I'm touching this the least possible. And even with that, I'm terrified because we've seen how brittle this piping is. It's just so dangerous. I do wish this Poly-B cut this easily. That would make my life so much simpler. But if I don't push it hard and I just let the machine do the work, I can get a nice cut. Just making sure I have no burrs on the outside edge, which will interfere with the very small O-ring that's inside of here. Okay, good. Good. Okay, we didn't break anything, and this one is done. All things being equal, that went together very nicely, but it was this right here that I was just so terrified of cracking. This is now brought into the 21st century, and when I get my slip couplings, I'll be able to deal with these two here. When I think about the access that I had for this one right over here, and what I'm looking at for access in the other one, I think I'm going to call it here. These fittings are not on the plan. The reason these locations are on the plan is because that's where the drain is located. And so you have a clean out access there for the drain. But the actual supply lines, they're not on the plan. They just happen to be running in the same location. So this next one here is a bit more challenging. So what I'm looking at for this next one, it's in this office here. Oh, it's warm in here. It's down there, and that access panel is the only way in. We can only stick one arm in at a time. This is a pretty tough job to do. You need to be able to get both arms in there. What I'm actually thinking is that when I do this job, the access panel itself won't be big enough. I may have to cut the drywall out and just make a nice big opening for myself to be able to get in there and do the work that I need to do, and then do a drywall repair when I'm done. And I'm kind of thinking that's the only way that I can do this. Before I go pack up my tools, I need to turn the water back on. Here goes nothing. I made sure to leave this door open so I'm not fumbling with any locks. So far, so good. Okay. Everybody's open. No leaks. So these were the guys that I was worried about. All these compression fittings that I had to undo to lift that riser. They are not leaking. So with regards to these guys, well, to be continued. Oh, green. That's a new color. Usually it's orange. Oh, black water, keep on rolling. Mississippi moon, won't you keep on shining on me? Wow, that was coming out black. It still is. We struck oil. Come and listen to the story about a man named Ted. Poor mountaineer, barely kept the family fed. Then one day he was fishing for some food, and up from the ground come a bubbling crude oil, that is black gold, Texas tea. Well, the first thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. Swimming pools, movie stars. Holy cow, this is still flowing black. That's gross. I'm going to end this episode here. I want to say thank you very much to everyone who took the time to watch. I really appreciate you guys sticking around and watching these things to the end. I hope some of you learned something. I'm sure a lot of you could teach me something, so feel free to leave comments below. I hope everyone had a good Christmas. Wish everyone the best for 2025 as we embark on another year. If you haven't subscribed to the channel or liked this video, go ahead and do that right now. I really appreciate that as well. Once again, thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you next time.